because of all these different actors and groups, but also these organisations that are globalist in nature, such as the World Economic Forum. You've got the transnational groups, the Atlantic sort of think tanks, and all of these different sort of entities which are trying to influence and steer our societies in whichever direction they choose to. And we kind of just get dragged along with it, which way or the other. And so I think that if you look at it from that perspective, you can start to understand. I'm not saying we agree with it. I'm just saying we can understand that you can have these interest groups that could encourage nations to go and invade other nations and destabilize them, because you can guarantee that whoever's supplying the bombs and whoever's supplying the concrete for reconstruction is making a lot of money.
Visit us for updates and shows at affinityxtra.co.uk.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are personal and do not necessarily represent the views of Affinity Xtra.
Hello and welcome to Affinity Xtra and welcome to Ideologees, the podcast where we talk about the ideological undergird under any given issue. I'm your host, Mr. Mark G, and I'm with my right-hand man, my big brother, Roger. Roger, how you doing?
Hey, Jimmy. I'm good, man. I'm good. Enjoying the current affairs right now. It's like, it's movie times, man. It's movie, epic.
But before we get into current times, I want to take you back to memory lane, Roger, and I want to ask you,
okay,
what were your, when George Bush and Tony Blair decided to go to Iraq? Do you remember where you were? What were your feelings towards it? What was your opinion that you formulated when they brought the discussion to the forefront about wanting to go and deciding to go? What was your assessment of? Do you remember that time? And what was your assessment of things?
Of course, I was in my teenager years there. I'm gonna actually bring in a difference, because I'm gonna give you a parallel, because that's a funny you asked that question. So I was working in T-Mobile when 9/11 happened. Yeah, so obviously it's a different time, but afterwards, I would say it is almost. I'm not saying it's connected, but obviously there's aggravations in that region. Yeah, and the reasons for. I remember we saw the news and the reasoning, and because our news was so blinkered. Yeah, so you sit down and watch BBC News, and you watch ITV News, and that's all we watch. So the narrative was controlled from today's perspective now. And I never forget when the 9/11 happened. I was around a load of signals guys from the army, ex-army around there, in there. And how they saw that 9/11, I was just like, yo, you saw the news? I said, right, lads, look out for the letter tomorrow. We're going for war. I said, war? Don't be silly. No one's going for war for that, yeah? And they just said, the new war. I said, what are you about? I said, this is war. It's Pearl Harbor. It's like, what, bro?
They kind of felt like
they knew. It's like, bro, you not looking at the news. There's no talk of news. Before you knew it, emails are going on between the army community, showing Afghanistan as a lake. Anybody who remember that time, the different images are going. The army guys almost had a sixth sense to say war is coming. They knew it, and now going back and how they look at and today. And we look at Venezuela and the reasoning for going in there. And I was talking to somebody from the army about this the other day about it. And his viewpoint is, at least Trump, he's got the oil guys running within 2 weeks afterwards, and just being honest about why he went in there. Where when he goes back to that scenario that you gave about, we're still going, whether really weapons of destruction.
That's another question I want to ask you, Roger, because you're somebody who likes to be analytical about any given issue. The president and the prime minister, the president George Bush and the prime minister Tony Blair at the time was saying that the reasons why they wanted to go to Iraq is because Iraq was.
Yeah.
What did you hear? What was your view about the whole weapons of mass destruction? Did you believe it? Did you not believe it? Were you skeptical?
No, I just took their word for it. There's no backstory. There's no history. The way we've been taught history doesn't realize what was going on, who put him in charge, who trained up the people. There was no backstory. So the context of what you saw was what you was given on BBC News. So the news could be more control how you tell the people in that time. And we moan about communist states, yeah, and other states, but the news, BBC, ITV, was controlled. It was easy to control. Nowadays, history is not told by one source. You know what I'm saying? It's by multiple sources. So, unfortunately, I was blinded by the information that was not given me. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So if I knew, how did he get in charge? Why was he got in charge? What was going on before? And all these different contexts, I'll go, so what's this really about? You know what I'm saying? Is this about, blocking a holy... Obviously, we saw the oil and thought, there's something going on down there. But not at the details of what was going on in the world in terms of power of oil. So for me, we just watched the news. Growing up, a generation of guys, I'm coming up to 50. We watched the news as children, taught history from school. We talked about World War One, World War Two. Not told about the grimacing details of D-Day, grimacing details of wars. We just told the victorious pretty parts and whatsoever. So that's what we thought a glorious thing.
So there's a reason why I asked, because our guest, you know how you talked about there were some people who were getting letters saying we're about to go to war. Well, our guest...
Basically, not getting there, just call-ups. Well, you know what it is. You leave early, and you're praying that there's nothing going on, and you get the call-up.
So our very special guest this evening got one of those call-ups.
Okay.
Lords, how you doing?
I'm really good. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I really appreciate you inviting me on tonight. And,
Lords, you were at the Iraq War. Tell us about your experience at the Iraq War, and tell us about your experience there.
Yeah, so I was just listening to you guys chatting, and so I also recall where I was on 9/11. I was at university at the time, and I sat on my sofa at home, just waiting to go and set off to university, and the TV came on, and the first tower collapsed, and then subsequently the second tower. And I just remember it's one of those days. The only other one that I have so vivid in my memory is when Princess Diana died. It burned into my memory, and I wasn't in the military at the time. I was at university studying military history, which was a passion for me still.
Yeah, cool.
And it lent itself really well to my subsequent career. And so I knew that everything was going to change from that point onwards. And very soon afterwards, you saw the Special Forces, the American Special Forces and the British Special Forces going into the Tora Bora Mountains in Afghanistan. And exactly what you were saying, Roger, we didn't understand at the time that the people who had supposedly orchestrated this were those who had been funded and supplied by the CIA in order to fight against the Russians.
You went straight there.
But the point is, it's like straight away. And then, so I'd always been, aware of sort of a different way of looking at the world from quite a young age. And so I joined the military with my eyes wide open. And the reason for it was I've always had a strong desire to serve. I've always felt I'm a natural leader, whether it was on the rugby pitch or just, amongst friends. And I joined the cadets as a child as well, so I had a bit of an experience of it. And I was very lucky after university to be accepted to go to the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst, which is where officers in the British Army get trained prior to their first position. And so when I actually got into the regular army, it was in 2006. So the war in Iraq had already been going on for 3 years, and it had switched from this big grand strategy of going in and decapitating the regime, getting rid of Saddam. And I'm sure you remember where George W. Bush was on his aircraft carrier with a big banner behind him saying "Mission accomplished." And that's when it all went downhill. It turned into a counterinsurgency. So a counterinsurgency is basically where you have the population of the country who start to form into rebel militias and insurgents attacking a military force, but dressed in civilian clothes. So completely different challenge to fighting a group of soldiers with green uniforms on, little, epaulets and everything. And so when I went to Iraq, it was during that period. And so I deployed to Iraq in 2007, but already there, that was starting to wind down because Afghanistan was creeping up. And so very soon after that, I deployed to Afghanistan and then back to Afghanistan. And it's just this really crazy period in the military's history.
And let me I've gone into a little bit of your backstory. You had said that there's some effects the war had on you. Could you, on a personal health and a mental health level, could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think that humans aren't designed to be exposed to those type of conditions, that type of trauma. And I don't know many people, well, in fact, anyone who's been exposed to that, who's come back and, was perfectly fine. People deal with trauma in different ways. And also something interesting to me is looking at it from the perspective of a person's worst day is their worst day. And so you may have had really tough childhood and lots of trauma growing up. And so then perhaps you've been more capable of dealing with more horrific trauma, say in combat or in war. Whereas if someone's had quite a sheltered upbringing and quite a privileged life, it may only take a little bit for them to struggle more with it. So it's on a bit of a sliding scale. And for me, I was so consumed with doing the job to the best of my abilities that you don't really have time to think about everything that you're seeing and hearing and experiencing. And life's just so frantic, and that's without being shot at or blown up. And so I mentioned that I went to Iraq, and I was in a leadership position, 23 years old. So I felt super privileged. I was, learning my craft almost when I was in Iraq. And so by the time that I got to Afghanistan a couple of years later, I was still in a position of leading men, but this time from day one, it was gunfights every day. I was involved in 4 separate explosive device incidents, and there was two of them in vehicles, 2 of them on foot. I've actually got something I just wanted to show you. So this is a hip flask that my dad gave me for commissioning out of Sandhurst, and you'll just notice from the shine that there's a dint in it. That was in my rucksack when I got blown up off my feet, and so I've always got that a bit of a memory of someone was watching out for me that day.
Wow. That's a movie, that is. That's a movie.
Am I right in saying that you suffered some PTSD, and how did you recover? Tell me about what you really were enduring and how you kind of came out of it as well.
So I'd like to give you a little anecdote first, which will explain how.
Sure.
So one of these times that I was involved in these gunfights and very challenging conditions in Afghanistan, I was leading my patrol one day, and this is truth. I was leading my patrol one day, and my intention was to turn left down this path, and I had a voice: "Don't go left, go right." And it wasn't a physical voice, but it was most definitely implanted in my head, and I was like, "Oh, better listen to that." I went right. Took my guys to the right, an explosion occurred to the left where I was going to go.
Wow.
And that was enough for me. And so if I then fast forward to when you're in the height of all of this massively, confused kinetic environment, you don't have time to process anything. It's when you come home and you have to start trying to return to some sort of normal existence that all of a sudden all of this trauma that's been layered up and layered up and layered up, it has to go somewhere. And most people, most men, haven't really got any tools to deal with this. I could be told I don't have great range of emotions, and many men would say the same, and that's just the way that we are. But I then sort of started to struggle in ways that I wouldn't expect, like like how we have bins that are like different colours for different stuff. I used to get really angry about them and not putting the right one out on the right day. And I thought, why am I getting so angry about this? And then it would manifest into other ways that made me realise that I wasn't right. And it was almost as if my head was starting to fight against me, which is quite a strange experience because, normally your mind and your head is like just helping you to progress through life. But it was almost as if mine had turned against me. And the other interesting point is if you go onto Google and have a look at what the symptoms of post-traumatic stress are, they'll tell you it's nightmares and it's, being scared of loud bangs and, nightmares and wanting to avoid traumatic places. I didn't have any of that. So I thought, well, have I got PTSD? Am I a fraud? And so you then start to question yourself. And it's only with time and experience and understanding that I've been able to accept this thing, but then move forward from it, because it would be a bit of a travesty to go through all that, get blown up, get shot at, see friends, get killed, and then allow yourself to become a victim of this label and then not use this gift of life that you've been given. So I thought, I need to find the strength to move forward. And I wouldn't say I'm recovered or better, but I know how to manage myself so that I can then still have a functional life. I'm a father of 3 boys. I love to travel. I'm very active within the veteran community. So I have lots and lots of positives going on in my life, but that only happened for one reason. And referring back to that story I gave you about that voice, God, a higher power, whatever someone wants to call it, I fully believe that he or she is there helping me to steer my life in the correct direction. And so I think if you gift your life to God, which I believe as a thank you for the salvation that I received, then I will walk the path that I'm shown and just have that faith, absolute faith that I'm doing the right thing, I'm going in the right direction. And so ultimately that is that saved me. If that makes sense.
Wow. What a wonderful story. What a wonderful story.
What I will say as well, because I look into mental health, and I think that sometimes correct me if I'm wrong, people look at, okay, are you have you recovered, are you fixed, are you this and whatever? And I believe, and I will say this myself, it's my own personal journey, I don't think we ever are fixed. We have to continue to manage our mental well-being for the rest of our life and put things in place. And I think that the struggles and the scary thing when it comes to PTSD, it's a very modern diagnosis. Yeah, I remember being and we're similar ages, so we remember the Falkland Wars when we was younger, and you had a lot of men who came from the Falklands War, not a clue about PTSD, the treatments of it, and and it's about them. We always look down at the Russians, the armies, and how they, everybody else's army, how we look after American and British soldiers. It's the next level. But PTSD is a modern thing, and even struggle, because I have addiction towards watching war films and whatsoever. You can ask my wife, I always watch it. But I watch a program called SEALs and Navy SEALs in America, and there's a lot of focal points around PTSD, and it shows you, but they're bringing it to light still because men are still struggling. End of the day, still the traumatic feel. And what hurts me the most, and we're going to get into this, is that when you realize that the war that they're fighting is not what they were told when they left the shores of the UK. They're going to honor, and when you get there, you're going, this isn't the war we've been told, and the war becomes something else to you out there in the field. And when you come back, no one knows what happened out there, and and it's a continued thing out of World War II and whatsoever. So when you study war, look into wars, you can see the damage it caused to men out of World War One, going in, the men who came back from that war, man, you just had to people. There's accounts now of people saying the difference between people before and then. So it's something which we are only scratching the surface of. And it's and if you've seen something, that's gonna change your life, And as somebody who hasn't been to war and I'm around people that have been to war, allow them. You know what I'm saying? Allow them. Just allow them. It's you don't know what they've been through, and it's a very scary place to be. You know what I'm saying? And we have a very commercialized version of war. A very commercialized version. It's not what we think it is. You know what I mean? I'm not talking like I've been there. I've just spoke to so many people. I've just been blessed to be around and have conversation. And I'm going, did you just say that? You know what I'm saying? But the humor of soldiers, it makes me laugh because their humor is just the next level. Do not be in a room with soldiers because the humor is politically totally incorrect.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm saying. He's laughing hard. It's just so. And you look at them going, did he just say that? You know what I mean? And they're cool.
But I think because of what they've been through, it's
yeah.
necessary.
You just have a vibe, that vibe. And again, so that's something which I will, and you can correct me, sir, if you want to. But like, it's a continual thing, and we need to give space. And men struggle, full stop. Let alone men who's been through so much trauma. You know what I'm saying? When they're coming in, and we just need to be there, and we need to be open to supporting it, even from a Christian perspective, a church perspective. Do we even have spaces for our guys who have been in the army and come back? Because there are people that have been to the army and come back, and we don't even know who has been, who hasn't been, and who has. You know what I'm saying? It's not about the victory of the war. It's about in their life and their mind. You know what I mean? So that's where I'm at with that, guys. So that's I thought, let me just add that, because I really do feel that that's a something which we're only touching right now. Mental health is just the 2020s, you could say we touched it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So
There's a couple of points to add to that as well. So in regards to trauma, obviously, the military are quite strong candidates for the PTSD sort of avalanche that's occurred over the last 15, 20 years. Also, if you think of it from the context of any person, say, who saw a road traffic accident in front of them, that's going to be seared into their memory for life. The paramedics, the fire service, the police, they will see that, and they will be living in trauma on a daily basis. Now, for me in the military, I would prepare for war. We would go away, and then we would come back. Whereas the blue light services, they're literally on shift, dealing with whatever happens during their shift, and then they've got to come home and be a family person, and then do it again and again and again. And it's like, I don't know how they deal with it.
That's a good point. That's a good one. Jeez.
And what
in terms of PTSD, so my dad was in the parachute regiment in the late 60s and 70s, and I suspect strongly that he also had trauma, the after effects of what he experienced. But like you were saying about the Falklands veterans, very much stiff upper lip, maybe drink too much, they'd have a fight and they just would never try and process it. But the sad aspect of it is that in World War One, they were killing their own men, executing them, because they were, say, deserting from the trenches, when in fact afterwards they realised that they had shell shock. Vietnam War, there was a massive sort of study on all of these soldiers and Marines that were literally going crazy. So I think that the powers that be have always known that this is the natural reaction to combat and war. But as you touched on, Roger, they have this naivety, whether it's with films or comics or the cadets, because otherwise you're never going to get young men.
Yeah. They're recruiting.
And we could talk about, and we'll get into, we could talk about the merit or the demerits, or whether it was justified to go to this war or that war. But what I will say myself, Lord, thank you for your service.
Yeah.
For anyone willing to go to fight for the country, I have just massive respect, and just, yeah, I just want to say thank you. And the question I would like to ask before we get, trust me, we'll get into politics, but in fact, this is a perfect segue to kind of get into the political, ideological aspect of the things that we'll talk about. As somebody who has experience in the military, it's very important to know firsthand how you feel about how the government is treating the soldiers that come back. What do you feel is your assessment of that? Are they doing a good job? Are they doing a bad job? I would like to hear from you firsthand about that. It's very important. I want to hear about that.
Yeah, no, so, I mean, I'm a veteran. Because of my experience both in leadership and then with post-traumatic stress, I've spent the last 10 years working in the small space of the veteran community. So I set up a small social enterprise which helped members of the ex-military move into the construction industry, because I felt there was quite a natural fit between the two. It's about communication, teamwork, safety, working to schedules, working outdoors, quite demanding work. So I created a program but rather than say just helping someone fill in a CV and then offer them a job, I wanted to dig into why they couldn't get their own job. So we looked at any limiting beliefs. We looked at what they could do to have more self-confidence and be able to move forward and have like an understanding of the transferable skills that they acquired during. Because obviously the military spends an awful lot of money on training somebody up to become a soldier. But then at the end of the process, it's like this giant machine. Cog's broken, get rid of it. And they're not interested in fixing the broken cog. They just sling it onto the rubbish heap. And so we hear a lot about, say, in America, them having a really good veterans program. And I think that there's probably different perspectives on that. But in Britain, it's non-existent other than what the charities provide. So there's lots of political talk about how we want to support the veterans and have this covenant enshrined in law. But I don't see that, and I've not seen that. What I have seen instead is people like myself who perhaps have left the military at a relatively young age and they've still got quite a lot of energy left in them, and they see that there's an issue, and then they create a grassroots level organisation to deal with that. And so you see the most beautiful organisations across the country, and people aren't earning money, or they're not earning masses of money through. They're doing it from the goodness of helping others and supporting this small community. And it might be like horse therapy, it might be art therapy, it might be therapy through rock climbing, and literally anything you can think of. Over the last 10 years, it's been built up with very little support, because at the tops of the tree, sat near the government, there are some very big charities with deep bank accounts, and they do a great deal to support a higher level, whether it's like helping with mental health, helping with respite, helping with supplying white goods. Say someone's found themselves on hard times and they don't have a fridge or they don't have a microwave. The charities will then go out of the way, and they'll have volunteers that will help them to do this. So there's an incredible range of offers across the UK from people who either have an affinity for the armed forces community or, say, former members of. But then on top of that, the government will occasionally, say the right words, but there's no action.
That's unfortunate. That is seriously unfortunate, and I pray and I hope that changes. I'm sad to hear that, and just the fact that in fact I was even watching Prime Minister Question Time. They will mention one military person who just passed, and they say we honor them, but it's just mere words. I think that's That's a disgrace. I'm sorry. That's a disgrace for people to go out on the front lines to serve. We need to do better. The government needs to do better and put money and action where their mouth is. I'm really saddened to hear that. Let's move on. Recently, President Donald Trump of the United States had he had made some comments which I mean, quite frankly, I think were quite clumsy and I wanna get your response. He said,
Go on. What did he say?
He said something along the lines that the U.S. troops that went to Iraq and Afghanistan, and I think it's something to the effect of the British and the Canadians and the NATO guys. They were there, but we don't really need them. They didn't really do much, and it greeted a lot of people who are upset. One thing, and just to get into the political field a little bit, in fact, even people in the UK who are ideologically and politically aligned with Trump, was saying that was messed up. And Keir Starmer, I'm glad that he even stood up. I know there's much to be said about Keir Starmer. Trust me, and Roger, we said quite a lot about the current administration. But he was 100% with his response to such a. I'm sorry, and this is not to say I'm not here to say Trump bad guy, but I think that was messed up.
I want to hear your viewpoint on the response before, because I got a perspective. Are they saying back to Donald Trump? Yeah, because Donald Trump has turned around and said the American soldiers did majority of the work. Yeah, correct. We've just say crew. We majority of work. We took the majority of the hits. Yeah. You say, is it the case that they went back to him to say, you're incorrect, it was an equal situation?
I think he even responded on True Social because it was quite clear a lot of notable political figures, not in UK and in Europe, and military figures in UK and NATO expressed publicly their disgust and repulsion. In fact, I even had one soldier in Piers Morgan, who I think a relative of Piers Morgan, he said that was absolutely disgusting what he said. Yeah. Say what you want, how good about the good job that he's doing in America, good or bad. That was disgusting. So much so that he responded on his True Social. Now, Trump being Trump, he didn't say, I'm sorry. But in a roundabout way, he kind of tried to take back the words, but not to the very point of saying sorry, because that's not really Trump style. But you know what? I agree with everybody who was here back and said, look, I mean, they were there and we've lost lives. 100%. You know what I mean? 100%. I'm sorry. You can say I'm not here to say Trump has said everything bad or he's everything good. I'm not here. But on that very one, I think I would have been upset. Loz, could we get your perspective on that?
Yeah, so first of all, on Piers Morgan, I'd just like to say he was the editor of The Mirror in the early 2000s, say around 2003, 2004. At the time that his brother, who was a serving officer in the army, was in Iraq, he actually had some fraudulent photos of prisoner abuse released on the front page of his paper. Yeah. And it actually caused an uptick in rioting across the whole of the country. Yeah. And what he tried to do
are you saying that was fake? I didn't know that. Wow. Yeah. Okay. I didn't know that.
When they looked at the photos, they could see that the kit and equipment, because soldiers are very particular about the way that they dress and secure their pouches and stuff. And the photos were clearly faked. But it was just more the fact that he, as the editor, had allowed these fake pictures to be put on the front page of The Mirror. So that's Piers Morgan. It's quite interesting, some of these guys that get recycled as, fountains of hope
and joy.
Alistair Campbell, who we can talk about in a bit, same application. But in terms of Trump's comment, I'm gonna play devil's advocate, because I don't have a particularly strong opinion on him as a person. I'm I'm sure that depending on what source you go to, he's like the worst person since the devil, and on the other side, he's a savior. And I think that the truth is always somewhere in the middle. However, he's made it quite clear, and he's been voted on the premise that he's going to put America first. He's going to, not engage in foreign wars, i.e. Afghanistan, but that's different to the Venezuela incident raid. So when one of the things that he's felt that he needs to do on behalf of the American people is to stop the rest of the world taking advantage of him. And you can't deny that the European nations have essentially, sat back, allowed America to pay the lion's share towards NATO, and therefore all our militaries have just declined. And every year the Treasury across Europe has said, you know what, we can probably make some more savings on the MOD, because they know that the Americans are always going to protect the NATO alliance.
Come on now. Yeah.
He's turned around and he's basically said, look, if you guys don't start paying, I'm going to pull America out of it because it's no use to me anymore. And he's actually done that with quite a few of the United Nations sort of subcommittees, etc., quite recently. But he managed to get all of the European nations to accept that they probably need to start paying for their own defence. And so one of the issues that we found in both Iraq and Afghanistan was the fact that the British soldier, and I can only really talk about the British soldier rather than the French or other European nations, but the British soldiers always had a very can-do attitude, and it will make do. And if you say, I need you to do X, Y, and Z, but you've only got enough resources for X, they'll still do all three, but they're just going to burn themselves out doing it. And just to give you an example of that, there was British soldiers driving around Iraq in 2003 in open top Land Rovers, no different than the ones that you'd see on the roads in the UK. And you know what they had in front of them to protect them from bombs? Sandbags and chicken wire. And that was the extent of what the troops were being given to protect themselves. Now, by the time they got to Afghanistan, because so many people were dying, they started to throw a lot more money. So like when I was there in 2010, we actually had these sort of off-the-shelf big American armoured vehicles, which, kept me alive, kept a lot of people alive. But that's not the same as, our courage, our bravery, our professionalism as the British military. First of all, you've got the politicians, meddling. But then you've also got the Treasury, not allowing it to be funded as it needs to be. So the Americans probably were doing the lion's share of the work. Proportionally, the British troops had a very dangerous province in Afghanistan, which is Helmand Province. And so America would be looking after the rest of the country, with little pockets of, say, multinational forces here, there, and everywhere. But where the British troops were in Helmand, it was one of the most sort of kinetic, which means there was so much gunfire and activity from all sides across the whole country. So I think that's why the British troops, because the British troops that were there saw exactly what they were doing on a daily basis. They knew the firefights, they knew their friends and brothers and children and fathers and mothers that had been killed there. But I don't necessarily think he was targeting that comment at the British troops, because he clarified. I think he, he's probably a busy guy, isn't he? He's trying to save the world, run the world, and he's been given a briefing note saying, right, you need to put more pressure on them, to spend on NATO, and then he sort of slips up.
And you know what?
That's
No. I totally agree, 100%. Because if you actually know the numbers, the British and the Americans, they growing up, we're the natural guys when you're growing up, seeing wars. It was the British and Americans give the handshake to each other, and they're going to do the dirty work. And ultimately, I studied European politics a lot when I was younger. Looking at the EC, remember the European community as we were growing up, and then the EU, it all just European Union, it changed. And I studied that, and they had European had their kind of like Soho, I would call them, I don't want to belittle the army, but they had their little cohort of that had like a Euro troops, yeah. But the British had their own, like they weren't mixing with that. They had their own functionality, and And you got to think about Germany is a very, very, very big nation, very strong, very wealthy nation, and it's only just now there because of the stigma of World War II. It's like they've refused to armor up to what it should armor up. So they've almost been allowed to invest into everything else because nobody will trust them to have armory. So the British and the British and Americans have always kind of done the work. We can't trust them. And it's not saying they can't look after themselves, but I only can give the perspective that I can see. So I apologize if I offend German soldiers and the French friends. I'm not saying there's none of them, yeah. But at the end of the day, still, yeah. When I hear the French, it's like French spearhead the attack on Libya at first, and they just do something like that. The part of, but when it comes to front line and whatsoever, they didn't really. The armies are only ramping up now because of the Ukrainian war, and the Americans really going no, and the British going really. We don't. It's not really our frontier. You know what I mean? And that's the first time I've seen them step back and go, Germany, go on. You know what I'm saying? You guys go, yeah, it's closer to you than us. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? And it's like, wow, okay, these guys got to start purchasing some gear now. You know what I mean? And that's the vibe I kind of get. You know, I can be corrected, but I only can give my my knowledge that I've absorbed over time. But since World War II, Britain and America has been the soldiers of the West. And the soldiers are, you know, against in the Cold War, you know what I'm saying, and it's them and whatsoever, and obviously the American army is just massive.
Yeah. So Laws, we've taken a lot of time to talk about your military experience and the aftermath and how you have kind of your healing process has been part of your healing process has been about helping others, and I really appreciate that. But I want you to take your time with this question. We now arrive at a point now where you are now raising a petition for people to sign this letter asking our Prime Minister to resign. So me and Roger, we're gonna sit back and we just give us a comprehensive answer about the things that you have seen from the time you left war that has led you now where when we go on your Instagram, what you're asking people is, guys, I want you to sign this petition because I would like to politely ask Sir Keir Starmer to resign. You know, and just to add a caveat to that question, I want you to also add to that as you're explaining that story, what you see about one thing that I said that we would talk about is your feeling about the erosion of national pride and identity. And so, and I think when you take time to answer this question, I think we will extrapolate a lot about why you are here today, why you're doing this, and this is not so that we encourage people to sign the petition. They can make their choice, but we want to understand what are some of the things that you have seen and observed since you came back from war that you feel that the trajectory of this country is such that people need to sign this petition because the country is going in the wrong direction. So me and Roger are gonna sit back. We wanna listen to that story.
Go for it, bro.
Well, to be honest, I'd say the last 10 years has been about healing and moving forward with my own life, rather than paying a great deal of attention to those people who you would assume that were elected to be our representatives would be doing on behalf of us all. So I joined the military. I joined because I wanted to serve. Obviously, I took with grace the things that I experienced because I chose to be there. And a lot of soldiers will say this to you that, for all the bad things that happen, if you are a professional soldier and you love your job, going to war is like being a professional footballer and fighting in the playing in the FA Cup final. It's what you've trained to do. It's what you want to do. And obviously, as an effect of that, I suffered from post-traumatic stress, but I don't hold that against the government, the army. It's just a thing that happened. So after that, I then decided that I wanted to continue to serve. I wanted to use my experience to try and help others. And I'd found this, growing connection with God, which kind of steered me ever since. And so I always think to myself, I want to be able to, end when my life ends and I have to go and answer for what I've done during this lifetime, be able to honestly say I did my best. I tried to be the best person. And, sometimes moral courage takes you in directions that you perhaps wouldn't want to do if you wanted to, not get in trouble or put your head above the parapet. So even when I first made a video in 2015 about having post-traumatic stress, it was the most daunting experience to me because I was open to ridicule. I was open to people saying, oh, he's crazy. But I realized if I could help just one person by doing that, then it was worth it. And, fortunately, I was able to help a lot more than one person. But my focus was entirely within the veteran community. So I tried to help them back into work. I tried to help them, maintain that wellness. I also had a great deal of experience building communities, public speaking. I was able to act as an ambassador for some of these big charities on national level events. So, that was me. And it was only really, obviously I'd always kept an eye on current affairs. I knew what was going on in the world. You'd see the scandal. You'd see, certainly with, the pandemic, you notice that a lot of society changed. And all of a sudden it was very present. Because everything that I'd understood about conspiracies and conspiracy theories prior to that, it was, say, from reading David Icke books and, looking at different alternative histories. So I knew that there was something different going on in the world. I didn't have all the answers, and I still don't. But it just allowed me to start questioning things. And so also my military experience had taught me you have to question everything. Don't take anything at, face value, unless it's truthfully, the absolute certainty that that's what it is. And I think it's about being an observer, just being in a place, observing what's going on around you, taking all of this information in, analysing it, and then coming up with, a central intelligence product. And so that's the way my brain works, and it's how I've been able to solve problems. It's how I've been able to help other people. And it was actually, I took my son, so I've been looking after my children as well, for, the last sort of 5 years, getting them through high school and stuff. And I took one of my sons to the Alps last summer. And I think, everything had just sort of culminated. It's like I was in a good place. I'd moved forward from this, period of transition and post-traumatic stress into a new version of me, a better version, or, a different version. But I still had a desire to serve. And I still wanted to help other people by looking at all of this stuff that's going on and try and distill it into something as simple as possible so people could understand it. And I decided at that point that I wanted to start trying to reach more people. I never realized how many people I'd start to reach, but it was sort of breaking away from helping this little small community of the veteran community to all of a sudden wanting to try and awaken people. And again, it was this daunting experience of, okay, I'm preparing myself to be ridiculed. People are going to think I'm crazy again. They think, oh, what's he doing now? I thought, you know what, again, going back to that moral courage, sometimes somebody has to be the person that puts their hand up first. And I think that the proof is in the pudding of that, in such a short space of time, I'm speaking to people. I'm speaking to you, lovely gentlemen, but I'm also speaking to people from as far from New Zealand, the United States of America, Canada, lots of Scandinavian countries, lots of European countries. And it's like everyone's resonating with the exact same thing. And you guys will know it fully as well. Something's not right. Something's been going on without us noticing because we've been so busy getting distracted, being divided. Identity politics has come into play. We had the division during the pandemic, which was the vaxxers, anti-vaxxers. Everything is just broken down into tribal divisions, but then sub-broken and sub-broken and sub-broken. To all of a sudden, nobody's cohesive anymore. We're not a community. And obviously, knowing the guys from the Royal Signals, they'll tell you just as easily as I can. The British military is like a mini United Nations. You have people from all ethnicities, all religions, genders, sexual orientation, all put into this space together. And the only thing that matters is whether or not they'll look after their mates and do a good job. And it also, it's built on these Victorian values, which are still maintained there for a reason, which is that they work to keep people working as a team, seeing the bigger picture, not just being a group of individuals that are put into victimhood and more interested in themselves than the community. And so all of this, it really just dawned on me very quickly that the key reason that all of this has happened, it isn't that group or these people or whoever. It's the political class, because the political class are the people that we elected to look after everything for us, so we could just crack on raising our families, earning money, being good people. And they didn't. They were essentially traitorous. They chose to serve a master which was not their own people. And I think that they are so far down this path that they're trying to take us that they don't even know how to put the brakes on if they wanted to. And I thought, I also looked at lots of people venting, and they were venting in the wrong direction. They were venting towards immigrants. They were venting towards left v right, this group versus that group. And it's like, no, we're all in this together. We're all in this together, and we can look after each other. But what was happening is that small little offshoot groups would set up, get angry, do something, and then they get squashed by the government very quickly. And so you almost have to look back at history to think, okay, who created a mass movement that was successful? Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela. And did they do it through masses of violence, or did they do it through slowly building a mass movement of people all with the same ideals, who were prepared to do non-violent protest, who were prepared to just say, no, we don't agree anymore, we don't acquiesce to this anymore. So I felt that I could apply my own experience and background to try and just give a bit of sense to everything that's going on, and to call out the government, to call out the people who we elected and pay to represent us and our interests, and have failed to do so at every step of the way for the last 25 years, probably even longer. And I think that, if you look at the Blair years and where the new Labour spin has brought us to, it's just been absolutely disgraceful, because you used to have people who would say, go out and have a successful career, whether it's in industry, whether it's in the military, the arts, whatever, and then they decide, you know what, I've earned enough money, I've achieved enough for myself, I now want to serve the nation, I now want to give back. And they were the right people, because they weren't doing it for the power. They were doing it because they had enough experience and enough capability to actually then set the nation up in the best way for the future generation. And Edmund Burke talks about this contract being between the living, the dead, and those yet to be born. And I agree with that we have to see that we're merely here as custodians of this nation that we're in, and that we have to set it up so that our children and their children and so on and so on can all look after it. And I can't see that anything that the government does is doing that. And so I felt compelled to speak out. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what happened with Blair. So essentially, the easiest way to sum it up is that he was anti-Britain in everything that he did. From the mass migration that started with him. Now, I come from an Irish background, and the Irish came over after the Second World War to help rebuild Britain. So my grandfather came across, and he married an English lady, and then my mum married a Scottish guy. So we're sort of all moved around and been.
And I just stop there just to mention. You just I'll let you pick up. It's just like your family, the Caribbean family. You guys came here to help the country.
Yeah.
Well, so there's that similarity there.
But the thing is, sometimes people forget that Irish got treated as bad as if you actually study the early 1900s, late 1800s. Just going back from then on, when they came over, it wasn't we're best friends situation. They came over to work hard, because obviously a lot went to Manchester, a lot came to Birmingham as well, set up a strong Irish community. The Irish community was where my mom's side of the family, they were, and that's why we got Guinea's punch in it, because we got mixed the two together, mixed too many communities together. And there is there's almost like a silent handshake between the Irish community, growing up Irish community, and the Jamaican, West Indian community, because it's almost a case of we came up on that same hustle. It was no Irish, no blacks, no Irish, no dogs. Yeah. And that's how tough it was. So the Irish, listen,
they had it tough as well.
It wasn't oh, welcome back home talk when they came over. It was it doesn't matter if you served in World War, because Irish did serve in World War II, just like the West Indians and everybody else. Yeah, they all served. They came to England, and none of us got the silver plate. I mean, it wasn't like, oh, thank you for dying for us in these past two wars. We're gonna fix the Britain now, and none of us were welcomed. But we are where we are. That's just to set the scene that sometimes it wasn't as easy as just turning up.
I'm sorry that
sorry.
We'll pick. I'm sorry that I interrupted you, but I think it's also important for my audience to understand that I just like the similarities of stories, even though you're different communities. The Irish and the Caribbeans, they were invited here to build a community, and just like you said, you have that shared experience of you were made to feel like other when you came, rather than apart. But carry on, Lodge, with the story.
But so the point was, it was. I mean, like the United Kingdom. It's united. It's this kingdom where it's been built over centuries with people moving in and out, and just all embracing this idea of Britain. What the issue has been, because I completely understand why someone who is like born in the Sudan would want to come to Britain or Europe, because actually I'd do the exact same thing. It's like I wouldn't for a second hesitate, because I'd be thinking, you know what, I'm on social media, I've got my smartphone now, I can see what this country looks like, and so there'd be a massive draw for me to go there, and I don't blame anyone for doing it. But at the same time, you have to be conscious that a country with its finite resources can only sort of manage a certain population, and so that's not controversial in any way. And I think that this is one of the issues that's presented itself at this sort of tinderbox right now. It's not just that, it's like the way that there's just been a constant erosion of any sort of respect for the people. There's been this constant division, there's this growing bureaucratic surveillance state, and it's all developed as a result of the Blair era rolling into the Conservative era, which they weren't conservative in the slightest. They were almost just identical copies of each other. They just become these career politicians who've realised that actually they can make an awful lot of money, they can get a load of expenses, they can get a lot of freebies, and it's like they've just got the noses in the trough, and they're so busy taking what they can whilst they can, that if their party whip comes to them and says, right, I want you to vote yes on this. And, you know, most recently, as Keir Starmer was talking about the comments that Trump had made about British troops, he was also getting his party to go through the yes vote to remove the protections that Northern Ireland veterans had to prevent them from legacy prosecutions. So you're now going to potentially have 70 and 80-year-old former British troops tried again for crimes that were, you know, supposedly committed or alleged to have occurred in the 1960s. And it's like, it's so hypocritical. It's not putting, you know, the troops or the people in any way. So
yeah.
No.
That is a bit of a twisted moment there. To be honest, if I explain that there, I'm like, wow. So you're like, but you are going, you guys are amazing, but I'm just gonna leave you out to the dogs now. You know what I mean? With no support and protection, and not realize that sometimes the actions of soldiers are due to being put in a position that wasn't designed by them. They was put in a space and really you go to the manager, and the manager was the government and how to manage things. And something I realized about soldiers as well is that over the centuries, like you said, they go to do the job they're trained to do. Yeah. And they've been used by the political class a lot of times to justify to succeed. What I would say is, you know, when you refer to mass migration now, you know, the immigrants who came over, we were invited effectively to help because this nation got bombed out. Yeah, you got bombed out. A lot of people, male resources have gone, and the country was traumatized. It's almost a different sort of scenario. But I feel, and this is my personal belief from what I've seen and what I've learned and whatever. I do feel that we need to, as a nation, is look, okay, how did these guys get up here? Not get up here. Why can't they feed themselves? Yeah, and this ain't our fault. This is not on our level. It's a lot of times it's the extra cream that have been taken from the top. Is okay if these little guys sorting out the little private companies, nobody knows that BP is called, original name is the Iranian British Petroleum Company. Yeah, it was the original company that actually traumatized the locals, that actually led to far right extremists taking over the country. So it's a case of going, BP, why couldn't you take care of, let them have and at the same time, when it comes over here from the petrol stations, the people who earn money, we still earn money, but it's always a case of increasing prices just to feed them, while rich are getting this richer, getting absolutely fat rich because of our such high. It's like, who's taking all that money? Real in between? Is it that should be going to the local, so they don't need to have to come over here just to get some of that riches? That should be a case of take your appropriate cut and allow these nations to grow off their resources, and the resources that we refine over here will make our money from, and we'll take care of ourselves over here. And I feel that there's been an extraction, like you said, by the political class that has affected push towards migration from other people because they look on the videos and see this is amazing, not realizing that the political class has made a lot from it. And that's just, people can say, Roger, you're going too far with that one.
No, I think that's a good point. So Lords, one thing that I would like to answer first is, you've talked about the way the political class has maneuvered the nation in such a way that, you know, with the mass surveillance and the immigration. I want you to go a little bit as to why you believe to unmask what you believe the hidden agenda of the political class is. But before you do that, I would like you to comment on what Roger is saying, because even within our political space, when we talk about matters to do with immigration, what seems to be get lost in conversation, which Roger is so wonderfully emphasizing, is the international context that is leading people to come here. Because you will hear, especially the politicians on the right, saying we need to stop these immigrants from coming here, not knowing that we mentioned the interventionist nature of the West is also a contributing factor for people wanting to come here. And I think that context is not really they detach, and worse still, they will say, Roger, and I'm sure you, and I want us to mention, they say on one hand, the immigrants need to return. David Cameron has, when he was prime minister, he was trying to commit the government to give a percentage of the GDP to less economic developed countries. But the far right said, no, we want to cut that and we can have that to ourselves. It's like the right, I'm not saying that everything that the right say is wrong, but they want to divorce this conversation from the geopolitical context of Western interventionism that has affected the parts of the world from where these immigrants are coming from. Could you maybe give a little perspective on that from your perspective?
So to tie all this in, there's a concept, it used to be called the Great Game, which was when Britain was at its height of empire and the Russian sphere of influence was growing. And so there was these grand sort of geopolitical games that were being played in Afghanistan and India. And then as more and more partners and players have joined this, China, the United States, the sort of Saudi and Qatari sort of influence, you've got all of these states playing this great game still. But then on top of that, you've all of a sudden got all these billionaires that have been extracting all this money. You've then got terrorist groups, you've got narco-terrorist groups, you've got intelligence agencies, you've got different sort of entities, actors, individuals, states, and they're all playing this really amorphous game where sometimes they're allies, sometimes they're enemies, sometimes they're both, and we're all just stuck in the middle of it. And I think that you used to hear a lot about the American politicians having lobbyists, sort of giving them lots of money, and it would influence their decision making. That is just as prevalent in the United Kingdom as well now, and probably across the West. And that's because of all these different actors and groups, but also these organisations that are globalist in nature, such as the World Economic Forum. You've got the transnational groups, the Atlantic sort of think tanks, and all of these different sort of entities which are trying to influence and steer our societies in whichever direction they choose to. And we kind of just get dragged along with it, which way or the other. And so I think that if you look at it from that perspective, you can start to understand. I'm not saying we agree with it, I'm just saying we can understand that you can have these interest groups that could encourage nations to go and invade other nations and destabilize them, because you can guarantee that whoever's supplying the bombs and whoever's supplying the concrete for reconstruction is making a lot of money.
Yeah.
And you've talked about BP, and when the British and the Americans were carving up all of the oil that they'd found in the Middle East, sort of post World War II. I thought, you know what?
Yeah.
These nations could have the benefits of it, but I think we want to keep it all ourselves. And then some of these nations are switching on, saying, hang on a second, I know we did this really bad deal with you, but I think we want to renege on it now. And then they end up having a coup. And, so our intelligence agencies, once again, are just causing so much trouble where actually, so in regards to the non-interventionist aspect, I think we should stop meddling in other people's affairs. That's not to say that we shouldn't be able to defend the weak.
Yeah.
To if we see that there's some sort of genocide going on, but it can't be discriminatory in the sense that, as you see in the media now, people will pick and choose which cause us to support, because as you mentioned, Iran, there seems to be a massive silence as tens of thousands of people are executed by this hideous regime. Across Africa, that there's massive Sudan, sort of genocide, civil wars occurring that no one cares about. But then you'll have one particular one in Gaza, which, you know, the amount of airtime and the amount of media coverage and the amount of protests that have occurred in relation to that, it's like, you know what, if you're going to feel that way about that particular conflict, feel it about everything.
Everything,
you know,
yeah.
at all. And so that to me suggests that there's something else at play, some sort of narrative being played out. You know, some of these interest groups are, you know, clearly paying, because if you ever look at these protests, they've all got like manufactured placards. You know, someone's making a killing on selling all of these Palestinian flags, and, you know, whereas when you see a grassroots level protest, it's someone's just got a piece of paper and they've got a marker pen and they've, you know, scribbled out whatever they want to say and they're holding it up.
Yeah.
There's a difference between, you know, professionally manufactured and produced placards and something that someone's just felt a desire to do. And I think that we're being influenced by the media, we're being influenced by all of these think tanks and international globalist organizations, and, you know, the bot farms that we hear about in North Korea and Russia and China. And it's just this massive bombardment of our senses, and, you know, you don't know what to believe, do you? Because it's just so overwhelming. And then somewhere in the middle of that, you've obviously got the pull factor in regards to the immigration, but the intelligence agencies of the West have created these conflicts in the Middle East, destabilized whole regions. No wonder it's going to cause people to flee, because, you know, at the end of the day, if we'd actually spent all that money that we spent on destroying those countries, on rebuilding them, you know, creating better education systems, creating better healthcare systems, creating better opportunities for the people, you know, investing in factories, investing in roads, investing in railways, and it probably would have been cheaper, no one would want to leave them countries, would they? Because it's like, why would you? You know, at the end of the day, there's nothing wrong with sort of like, you know, people moving around the world, because we all travel, we all want to go and experience different places. But if country A is being bombed to oblivion, of course they're going to leave. And if at the same time our country, you know, whichever country is sort of offering lots and lots of incentives to go, of course people are going to go. And it's all being manipulated. And so ultimately, I get it. It makes perfect sense why it's happening. The only thing that doesn't make sense is why the political class, the people who we elected to be our representatives, to spend money on foreign aid to help develop these other countries, are not doing that. And they're not representing us. And so to sort of summarize this point, we are where we are. Yeah. And like, as we've already discussed, we are British. We can come from wherever, and, you know, we can come from Ireland, you know, we can come from the Middle East. And so this is not about skin color. It's not about ethnicity. It's not about religion. It's about a shared value system, and it's about a shared desire to have a loyalty to ourselves together and also to our nation. And I think maybe there's probably some people might not feel that that's inclusive to them, but from my perspective, I think that anybody who, you know, chooses to become British, who, you know, aspires to be part of the British nation and be loyal to it, and perfect example is those people that you see that, you know, are prepared to die, prepared to lose their legs in combat for Britain. And it's very frustrating when you hear about, say, Fijian soldiers or Commonwealth soldiers or the Nepalese Gurkhas who go and do this and risk their lives, you know, the trauma, injury, and then they don't get any ability to stay in the UK. And yet, so even like the actress Joanna Lumley had to have a massive campaign to allow the Gurkhas to actually get access to pensions on par with British soldiers. And it's like, who's allowed that? You know, is that one hand's giving and one hand's taking type of thing? So I believe that we need almost have a reset and say, you know what, we are Britain. We are Britain now. We are where we are. The history of Britain is what it is. None of us were alive to be part of that history. We can understand it, we can appreciate it, we can respect it, we can learn from it. But we need to now move forward together, and that requires everybody to buy in to something that they believe would work for all people. And so there's got to be a bit of give and take. It can't just be religion A gets to sort of rule the roost, religion B gets marginalised, or vice versa. It can't be that people with white skin get to hold the monopoly and everyone else, has to be second class. That doesn't work either. So I think you just need a consensus and say, right, this is who we are, this is what we stand for, this is what we believe in, and this is what we're prepared to defend for our children. And actually, if everyone could buy into it, all of a sudden they'd stop fighting and they'd say, right, cool, let's get on with it. That's the way that I see it.
So another question that I would like to ask is, you've talked about what the powers that be are doing, but could you maybe shed light as to the why? Why do you think Tony Blair and the people of that ilk, what is their goal? Because we've talked about what is happening, what they're doing, the deliberate things that they are making or allowing to happen. But I would like you to unmask to our audience what you believe the hidden agenda is. Why they're deliberately causing this disruption in many ways, so to speak. I believe that there is a hidden agenda there. How would you describe that?
I've thought about this an awful lot for a long time, and the only conclusion I can genuinely come to is that they serve the devil.
Yeah.
And there's a battle between light and dark. I can't come to any other fathomable reason why people would try to destroy their own home. It's like setting fire to your studio now and just sitting there as it burns down around you. And that's what they're doing. The politicians are, because their children live in this country, their families live in this country, their grandchildren and their future generations are going to live in this country. So I cannot understand why anyone would do such damaging actions unless they were in allegiance with something like not of this world. And that's the only conclusion I can come to. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Sorry, it is a question. It is a situation, because again, I always, people know I'm a history buff anyway still, yeah. So I look at not just one viewpoint, I look at all viewpoints of history. And one thing I realized in I call it the Great War, World War One, and for me, World War One never stopped till World War Two finished. If you look at like the political situations that were going on at the time, and people look at it, we got told in history books that because a leader got shot, that's why it all kicked off. But you had in pre-World War One, you had a royal class that was just you had peasants. People don't realize the peasant class. I talk a lot about slavery and so on, like that, so on, what it caused. But what you have to realize, we'll call them working class now because we look at working class now, but technically we're peasant class because the way they were treated. You go down a coal mine. I ain't going on a coal mine, mate. I ain't going up them cracks up there and living there, literally working 350 days a year and only have a couple of days off, and ponies coming out there for 1 week of grazing and going back down there. Are you having a laugh? You know what I mean? But these guys were feeding a bigger man's cause, yeah? A very, very, very rich upper class system. And there was a revolt, yeah? And the revolt, really brought in certain leadership from another persuasion, like far rights, like communism, and it built in because of people's struggle, because the rich abused. French Revolution, the royalty abused their position so much, yeah? And when you see there's a deafening, like I said, you refer it to evil, and you could definitely greed is evil, yeah, and 100%. And I see almost the same thing. The working class, the peasant class, we're becoming a peasant class now, how we're surviving in this world right now. And it comes to a stage where they realize we are the majority and we're going to kick off. And I feel like history shows that it goes down very badly for the political class. And when I look at now and I look at what's going on and I take the certain ideologies away in terms of race and religions and stuff, I take it away. Whenever people struggle to put food in their mouth, they look for very simple things. I mentioned a exercise back. I grew up in a white school, and one of the guys did an exercise when he was in primary class, and we would have been taught history the same way anyway, you know. And I never forget this. He said everybody with brown eyes, which was me and a couple of Asian guys and a couple of white guys that had dark brown eyes, we control the gaff. Yeah, we control it. I've spoken this before. And what we did, we just controlled it. We use that power. You know what I'm saying? We let it. And he goes, that looks like apartheid to me. Oh God. You know what I'm saying? You sat down and you start to, it's like this innate way of almost a Lord of the Flies approach to when you leave man to its basic instincts. He starts to look at, me and you together, let's beat him up and whatsoever. So it's almost a case of what I find now, it's almost, it's a very sensitive situation where the rich are just blatantly brokering deals, the political class brokering deals that we know go, hold on, that don't make no sense. And they're just doing it and saying, you can't stop me. And it comes to a stage where people are talking, and we have the power of online media now, and we're taking videos and pictures. It's a dip. I don't know where we're going to end up, but I totally agree. Greed is evil. Greed is driving it, and it's, again, you look at the Crimea War. You know, people playing their political wars. I always look at wars and as indications of when that happens over here, that has a problem for over here, and that impacts nations in the future. It impacts the size of the United States because of this war over here, and they ran out of money because of that war. Napoleon, then he has to give up Louisiana, he has to give up Haiti because Haiti. There's so many knock-on effects,
and I think the reason why I asked the question is because, I think I'll be more direct in the question because I definitely want to, because you've talked about this in your content. By the way, guys, we'll be adding his links of all his social media. He just does great videos of his analysis of things. But I want you to touch on what you have described as this growing trajectory towards this elitist, globalist, technocratic rule. I just want you to kind of, and I think that Tony Blair is a globalist, he's a technocrat. I think he's an elitist, at least one of them. I think he's got that. There's something about that. That's, I think, what I wanted to do. Obviously, yes, it's a devil ultimately, but I wanted you to kind of talk about that. Sure. that element specifically, that trajectory of this elite wanted to create they're doing all this to create this globalist technocratic rule that will be just benefiting the upper power class at our expense. That's what I wanted you to get into a little bit more, if you don't mind.
Yeah, well, the former head of the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, he famously said that we will own nothing and we will be happy. And it's really interesting that he was so direct when he said that. And so you may think, well, who are the World Economic Forum? Surely they're just like a group that come together like the G7 and just try and talk and, plan out how to save the world and, how to provide sort of inoculations to, kids in Africa or whatever. And it's a lot more nefarious than that, actually, because if we think about it from the perspective that Britain is a nation state, every other nation in Europe is a nation state, and then you've got the United States, although they're being a bit of an anomaly at the moment because they've got Donald Trump doing Donald Trump stuff. But certainly in Australia, New Zealand, Canada, they're all in lockstep in the sense that everything that's happening in the United Kingdom will subsequently happen in Australia or Canada or vice versa. Maybe it'll start off in Canada first, and then it will occur in, the other nations I've mentioned. But it's almost as if everything's being moved towards this Chinese form of governance, which is it's very controlled, it's authoritarian, it is still communist, and even though they have all of these great products that they produce a lot cheaper than anywhere else, and cars that they're flooding the UK market with, it is still a communist state. It's just that it's adopted a more capitalist approach to centrally control money making, whereas in the past a communist sort of state would be almost like North Korea, which is very much like 5-year plans, and probably got to kill off all of our intelligentsia because they may be a threat, etc. So they're doing it slightly differently, but they are still very much this authoritarian state. And we saw that during the first pandemic, when they immediately had this like complete security lockdown. And you even had it would have been Tory ministers at the time saying, I wish that we could just function a bit more like China in terms of locking down the country. And it's like, yeah, I bet you would. Because what they now do is they have something called the social credit score system. So they basically created a complete surveillance state, and it will monitor everything from your purchases using your bank account through to your movements around the city, etc. And it's also monitoring the state approved social media that they're given access to, which is not Facebook or Meta. They're not allowed to do any of that. And so basically, if you're a good boy or girl, you will be given all of your privileges. But if you're not, or you step out of line, then all of a sudden you can start having restrictions on you. And so if we think that you've got this model of where organizations like the World Economic Forum are trying to get us to, and we can see it, because we just need to observe China, we know that all of the countries in the West are almost in this tandem movement towards this authoritarianism. You've got governments that don't listen to the people, that don't represent the people, that bring out these absurd laws like, David Lammy's decided that we're going to remove the jury trials, which has been around since Magna Carta, and he's just on a whim, not in a manifesto, said, yeah, we're going to do away with that to remove the backlog. It's like, so after the backlog's gone, are you going to give us the jury's backup? No, I don't think so. And so much like, after 9/11, we had all of these really crazy controls at the airports, like you're only allowed 10 mil of liquid on the flight, and that's still in place now 25 years later. They're never going to retract, are they? And so you're using these organizations like the World Economic Forum, and they have a subgroup which is called the Young Global Leaders. And so basically people are nominated from all of these Western countries, and they get to go on this like a scholarship scheme called the Young Global Leaders. And it's almost like an indoctrination camp. And then once they've completed that and they become the alumni of it, they then get parachuted into senior positions across the West, whether it's in the media, whether it's in politics. And so if you look at a who's who of people that have actually passed through that program, you've got national leaders, you've got heads of the civil service, you've got people right at the top of media, people, in charge of newspapers. It's unbelievable the reach that they have. And it's all open for people to Google as well if you go onto their website, the World Economic Forum. And people might say, oh, that's fine, it's just trying to, give people an education in leadership. It's like, no, you are getting them to pledge allegiance to you as an organization, because they've only got their head start in life, and all of a sudden, this wealth and, travel and power, they've only got that as a result of the World Economic Forum or, similar entities. And so they're going to always do things that benefit them. And that's without going down the rabbit hole of looking at, the Jeffrey Epstein type scenarios that, I'm sure that people will be aware of. It's very clear that if you can indoctrinate someone into your way of thinking, then give them a really good career, they're going to maintain that loyalty to you. And so I think that the mechanism of the government ministers who are not representative of the people, but actually are following the guidance of organisations like the World Economic Forum, trying to manoeuvre the West towards this model that we can see on display in China is very much what it's all being done for. Now, you have to question, what is it about? Why would these people or this organisation want to enslave us all? What would be the end state then? Because imagine if they came out on the news tomorrow and said, right, you're all enslaved now, we are your masters. People would probably put up with it for about 24 hours, and then there'd be mass revolts and rebellions across. We're not all completely subdued. So I've never really understood what the end state could be.
Yeah.
But it's the only one that clearly is sort of presenting itself. But then, even if you look at Britain now, there was an article saying that Oxford's going to become the first 15-minute city. And basically, it's going to be divided into 3 subsections. And people that live in subsection 1, if they get given, I think it was like 50 permits to pass into sections 2 and 3 in a year. Otherwise, they start to get fined. And so what they've basically said is that everything that you need as a person is in 15 minutes of your home, and that's by cycle or walking. And they'll say it's to try and save the environment, but actually it's to confine people into a 15-minute break. And then if you bring in the social credit score system and the mass surveillance and the digital IDs, all of a sudden it's like, oh, Roger, we just noticed that you've stepped out of your 15-minute area twice in 2 days. So we're not actually going to give you any credits this week. So you're going to have to, live on gruel or something. You're like, and I know it might sound baffling to some people, but it's you can see the steps that would get you.
But the question is it, because what we're now seeing is, police knocking on doors saying, you said this on social media, I find it concerning. So we're seeing little trickles of this. So that is a big picture. So if that is a big picture, if I could kindly push back, do you think then that you kind of try to get, if this is kind of the big agenda and there's more than one person, what then do you feel you will hit if, for example, you achieve this big petition asking Keir Starmer, kindly please leave 10 Downing Street and have somebody else? If this is a big picture you're talking about, what are you just throwing a little rock at a small rock at a big issue by just asking Keir Starmer to leave? Because if he leaves, what difference would it make if another politician comes who is kind of beholden towards that agenda? Because I would presume you think, in fact, I presume to think that Keir Starmer is kind of bent on that, because he was open to, obviously he tried, but then after much opposition, he decided to not go ahead with the digital ID policy, even though it's not part of his manifesto. I also find it interesting that he actually said once that he would rather be at Davos than at Westminster. So that tells you a lot about the kind of person that he is. But say you achieve the goal that he does receive your letter of resignation and sees the overwhelming feedback, hypothetically, and then says, you know what, I don't have the popularity of the people, I'm out. What will that achieve if we've got this big overarching thing that is underplay, that is just bigger than just having Keir Starmer leave office?
No, you're absolutely right in that sense. And so I've had quite a lot of people putting in the comments on my channel, oh, you should become an MP, you need to represent us in Parliament. And there's no point doing that right now either, because you would just be sucked into this system, which is so overwhelming that it actually needs to be broken down in its entirety and rebuilt by the people for the people. Because as you say, you've got these massive interests, you've got intelligence agencies, you've got the billionaire individuals, you've got the World Economic Forum, and similar organisations, all just completely controlling the British state. And so my letter to Keir Starmer, it was going to serve one of two purposes. One was that it would, gain massive traction. And now clearly there was an online petition which had 4 million signatures asking for Keir Starmer to stand down
4
and
million,
call a
wow.
general election. But he didn't. They basically debated it in Parliament and said, "Yeah, thanks, no." So I knew the type of figures that they were going to dismiss. Even if you got 10 million signatures, they'd just say, "No, we're in charge. We're doing this for the people."
Yeah.
And they would listen. So maybe like Kemi Badenoch would sort of stand up and say, "You know what? I've got the confidence now to call a vote of no confidence," and say that would then trigger in Parliament a vote to see whether all of Parliament had confidence in Keir Starmer's leadership. And actually, that may have triggered a general election if people had sort of turned on him, because even Labour MPs, aren't. There's almost like a civil war going on within the Labour Party.
They blocked Andy Burnham. Do you saw that?
Yeah.
Blocked Andy Burnham from running to become a member of Parliament because he's quite a popular figure, one that they want to, they want. I'm sure there are a lot of people, because of Keir Starmer's lack of popularity, he's one person they want to put in the ring to kind of, salvage, what has become, a poor run at running government after taking over from the Tories. But yeah, as you were saying.
No, well, exactly that. So there's definite signs of concern within. And bearing in mind that the Tories had 14 years to get to the point that we all hated them. Labour's managed to achieve that in not far more than 14 months. They're only a year and a half in, aren't they? And
but again, I wanna draw back to the point. If removing, I just going back to the question, just circling back to the question. If you've got this overarching agenda that is at play, what good is it to remove, to changing one political figure and turning down the street in exchange of another, unless of course
it's puppets.
Yeah, it's just puppets. So what's the point then?
The strategy is this. So as I say, one of the points would be that it would achieve that aim. The other reason for it, and it's been highlighted already, is that there's a massive lack of apathy within, or sense of apathy within the UK population. What's the point in signing the letter? It's not going to make any difference. What's the point in doing anything because we're stuck in this system? And I don't believe that. I believe that this, as I said to you earlier, is like a bit of a battle between light and dark. And I think it's, the light is going to start sort of shining through soon. And so we need to never think that we can't achieve anything, because what we have is mass. There's 69 million people in this country, and only a small fraction of them are politicians or the authorities. And actually, our sheer numbers, if we were able to unite and actually had this sense that we could make changes if we all came together in this mass movement, that was what I was really trying to bring attention to through this letter. Because if people genuinely realize that we together can do anything, we can do anything, including overthrow the shackles of the World Economic Forum or whomever else we choose. We can build the nation that we choose to build for our children, but we have to just all realize that we have to come together to do that. So that was kind of what it was really about.
But here's a difficult thing, because, and this is where the big media hubs, which might be under the influence of World Economic Forum. I'll give you one example of the difficulty of bringing people together, because it's very nice to say that, but if we're saying that the political divisions that are apparent in our country today are are smoke screens to allow the powers that be to continue doing the evil work. I think it would take a lot to try and convince a young Muslim man in Aston in Birmingham who lives in the predominantly Asian area in Birmingham to convince him that what he wants is exactly the same thing that Tommy Robinson wants. And if you convince them to do so, the media up there might be up there will try and re-emphasize the division and say, no, Tommy is your enemy. By the way, I'm just giving a big example here.
Yeah.
It might well be that, let's just say I'm not saying it is a case, but let's say that the most things that are there to make people think that it's us against them rather than together against the elites, right? And then you come and say, well, what they want is what you want. But then at the same time, there's outlets that are on our screens and our television saying, no, they're the bad. In fact, I've even seen one animation of this big rich guy and the two small people, and the big guy he's the problem, but he's saying to the two small people, no, the problem is that person on your left, or the problem. So for me, it sounds mind-boggling. For example, I'll be honest with you. We've had this conversation with Big Up Ciros. Even Ciros is a just for context is a Jamaican man. He's a Christian man. He's actually an ex-gangster rapper, so he was kind of in the rap scene and all that kind of thing. He's now a Christian. He's now in ministry and everything. He had the balls to actually come to the YouTube to our interview and say, I actually think Tommy Robinson is actually talking a lot of truth. Now he might, I think you might say, okay, he's come out of the matrix and realized Tommy Robinson is actually, he's not the foe, he's actually the friend who's been ringing the alarm, and we've got the powers and big trying to convince us otherwise. But I think it will just take a lot for you to tell the black man or the Asian man, Tommy wants the same thing that you guys do, because the powers that be will say, no, he's the bad guy, so that it can further entrench those divisions to carry on doing what they do. Do you understand what I'm saying? That I just feel like this small screens, to remove those small screens so that we can look up and say the problem is up. I mean, look, that sounds like a bit like a tall order, because you can say, let's all come together, but when you get into the details, I mean, bro, how can I go to, I don't know, a Muslim-dominated area and say, Tommy's actually saying the right things, and be like, what are you on about? What I mean?
I hear you saying, but the thing is, history, again, go back to history, man. It always starts off from a small. Resistance starts from a small. Resistance starts, it has to start, and resistance to what's right, and resistance against something wrong, a system. If we didn't have resistance,
but how can we, if we think that the problem is not up, it's the person next door? How do we get there?
This conversation is resistance, This is what this conversation here. We're coming from polar different backgrounds. You know what I'm saying? And we're coming to have. I don't ideologically totally agree with yourself. I don't ideologically totally agree with our guest. But this conversation, somebody could watch this podcast and go at the end, oh, is that how?
We're all human.
Is that how? And I feel
reason,
that media has portrayed conversations when it comes to touchy subjects as an argument. So you have Piers Morgan having an argument with a black female on TV, and it makes it an argument. I'm sick of that narrative. We can sit down and have a straight conversation, and you know what? You can agree to disagree, but there's time for you to say, you know what? Let me go back and do little research and contemplate and think. But respect, man. Tell you what, let's have a drink together. Let's go. There's nothing wrong with that, and that's over religion. You could be,
but now we're talking about the whole country doing that.
But the thing is, what you have to realize, the country's being triggered by major media platforms, and us lower media platforms what we've done, we've fed into
independent media.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
We've fed into the narrative of arguing online. You know what I'm saying? And we disagree and have strong subjects and the same subjects, but we're not punching each other. I'm not going, yo, yeah, you soldiers, you're part of the system. Because sometimes people see soldiers and police and everybody says, oh, all this and all that. But it's not until you sit down and go, oh, conversation. Yeah. Oh, I never knew that. Oh, so you seen that? Yo, you served in Belize. Oh, is it? So what did you
and
you
you know what I have to say, I think we're here somewhere, and Lots, maybe, you know, you're a fine example, and we're a small example, and there are other great examples of independent media away from the legacy media. And the legacy media are feeling threatened because obviously they have the powers of big control. So I think if the legacy media are talking about how to kind of crawl the freedoms of the alternative media so that they can have dominance over the space.
They are threatened because because when it comes to sports, let me be real, I don't watch sport on. Remember Match of the Day growing up? You sit down, you listen to Match of the Day, you go religiously. I can't tell you when the last time I sat down and watched Match of the Day. I've listened to YouTube from fans' perspective online, and I find that more real and realistic out there. They consume more time when they are bigger than look at I Show Speed, as much as he's crazy. He's got 50 million followers. You know what I'm saying? And he's just, you know what I'm saying? And he's an independent guy who's this little black kid. I was like, he's this idiot guy that goes around, but you know how powerful and influential that guy is.
It's funny that you said that because there's something I have to share. There's this one guy who said, say what you want about Ashur Speed doing silliness in Africa. One thing that he said, one thing that someone said that Ashur Speed did against and I'd say it's an affront against the agenda of the legacy media, is that he actually showed the beautiful prosperous parts of Africa that the legacy media wouldn't want you to see. Because if you open to BBC, they go to the places where, but they do not show the places in Africa which are actually developing and prospering. But yet there's this one YouTuber who just went to have fun, but inadvertently kind of broke that wall and
stereotypes.
Said, wow, actually, there are actually people in Africa and they're thriving and they're growing. I think there's power. There's a power of independent media that I would say is a contributing force.
But you can't beat the people. You can't beat the people. Yes, it always comes round in a cycle, and I believe it comes round in cycles. And I believe, unfortunately, but you cannot. I know, say if we do nothing, Lars does nothing, we do nothing. We sit down there, play happy songs or gospel, and don't say anything about how we feel about politics and whatsoever, and not just be monolithic in our viewpoint, but have conversations and debates. Yourself, you can just say, listen, I was gonna just turn around, and just say, you know what, I'm just gonna do my cool stuff for my children, and just watch the world go down this space. And we're at an age and time when you come to your 40s and your 50s, it's times where we make an impact because of our wisdom and our strength is still in us. You know what I'm saying? And not to be a moany person. And when you don't do that, you end up, I see a lot of people this age doing silliness because they're not doing what they should be doing. You know what I'm saying? Not communicating, using that wisdom. They're just drowning themselves. You know what I'm saying? So that positive, they call it energy, that positive energy, you put it there. Listen, if you get one view, you change one life. You change two views, you get two lives. And if you start from there, it is fantastic. It starts the fire. No one sees who you're firing up. You know what I'm saying?
So, and I think maybe this is a perfect way to end this conversation by just asking Lords. Okay, we've talked about the powers that be and the downward trajectory the world is going. Do you really believe we can kind of turn the tide from where the dark powers can be? The dark powers are going. Do you feel like we can? There can be a shift. Do you really believe we can turn it around?
Yeah. So to answer your question as well, I think that we've talked about the extremes, and it's the small minorities on all sides that generally get the most amplification, whether it's through social media, the legacy media, whatever, because they're almost wanting to create this outrage and division. So what we don't want to do is try to convince a fanatic. And, you know, the definition of a fanatic is someone who's so entrenched in their beliefs that nothing you can say can convince them to change their mind. So why bother trying? Yeah, let's focus on people who have a bit more of an open mind view, because if we can have a conversation, and you know, we've not really tried to change each other's minds, but actually, if we're all open individuals, then if we hear something which resonates with us greater than our previous viewpoint, we're mature enough to think, okay, maybe I can look at this slightly differently. So what we need to do is focus on the people who are able within their hearts and within their minds to come together. Let the people on the fringes, you know, pull their own hair out. So you're not trying to convince, you know, the devout Islamists to become best mates with Tommy Robinson and vice versa, because they're probably never going to, and they're probably never going to change their views. But they've probably also, in their own truths, got valid viewpoints themselves, because you can only look at the world through your own eyes, with your own experience, with your own perspective. And so two truths can exist that are opposing, but both be true at the same time. So it would be difficult if you started off with trying to take the most extreme left view and the most extreme right view and get them to agree. But actually, the mass of the people in the country are more than open to conversation, to, you know, looking at what we can do to improve ourselves and the situation within the country. So yeah, I think it's completely possible. We need strong leadership, and it comes from you guys. It comes from me. It comes from people like us who are prepared to put service ahead of self-interest. Wow. Because we could all just sit back and think, you know what, I don't care. I'm all right now. You know, I'm just going to live my life out. Let the younger people worry about it. But we're not doing that, are we? We're here saying, what difference can we make? So in terms of what we need to really look at is identify exactly where we are. And it's a bit like, say, going on a mountain hike. Say you're lost in the fog. You don't want to just start walking off in any random direction. You need to try and observe enough to work out where you are, and you can probably figure that out from working out where you've come from as well, because then you know where you are. And once you know exactly where you are, you can then determine where you're trying to get to. And once you've decided that, you can use your compass and you can go off into the fog, and you can be confident. You know, check your compass every so often, make sure you're still on the right path. But actually, you're then able to move from A to B, but you can't just charge off. You need to just stop and focus. And I think that that's what we've got to do now, which is to awaken people to the reality of the world, and do it gently, because we're now talking to, you know, your middle-aged women, your middle-class families. This isn't, you know, your right and left wing extremists. Now, this is just middle of Britain, average person who likes to keep their head down, go to work, pay the taxes. They're the ones that are waking up now, because they're like, I can't take this anymore. So actually, let's focus on them. Let's give them some support and guidance, and gently bring them into this new world. And then we can all move forward together, because communities are super important as well. And this is why I've stressed the point about the community isn't white people or black people or, you know, Asian people. It's British. You know, and if we want to be British, we have to all be British together. And so we work out what that means. And it's not any of this, you know, I know you'd referred to this ethno-nationalist thing, and I had to look up what that was, because I wasn't really too familiar with it. But it's such an absurd concept, because I'd be getting kicked out, you know, because I don't have pure English blood, and nobody does. So that whole concept is just stupidity. That's like internet, you know, flat earth type stuff. So not helpful. What we need to do instead is look at the real world and say, right, let's build communities. Let's build small little grassroots communities that we can all almost create like a parallel system. So the government's taken us on the path that we've described earlier. We don't want to go there. So we need to sort of start supporting each other. And I know it does sound airy-fairy, let's all just unite and come together and, sing Kumbaya. It's not going to play out like that. But if we have conversations, if we respect each other, if we don't fear each other, I know that's difficult as well, because like, look at football rivalry, look at schools, like one high school will want to go and fight another high school
all day.
One football team will want to go and fight another football team. It's in our nature.
Let me give you an example, Los. Let me give you an example, Los, because even in social media, it's really bad. Like people already assume my motives by merely asking a question. So I did two things, and it really proved my point. I posed a question to challenge a right-wing figure. I won't say who. On the very same time, I also watched one post about somebody from the left, and I was challenging what they were saying. And on the comment section, people were railing at me. When I challenged the right wing guys, they were saying, "Oh, look at this lefty, look at this communist, look at that." And then the guys on the left are like, "Ah, look at this look at this wannabe Tommy Robinson follower." And I'm like, guys, I'm asking questions. So what I'm saying is that what you're saying, I think, this tribalism is really revealing even in social media, that even to ask a question is like, oh, this is so challenging. You must be on the other side. No. I actually, maybe I'm genuinely asking. Maybe I want a more detailed answer so that I can be able to make a defense if somebody else asks me that question. You know what I'm saying? It's like people already assume more. It's, oh, you're one of them. And in both sides, from the right and the left, they were both hurling insults at me. They both heard, oh, every name under the sun. They were insulting, but obviously I couldn't. But I mean, I take it by a pinch of salt. I still slept at night. So yeah. And I think, and again, this is why I'm doing this podcast. And Roger, I want to say I really appreciate what you just said a minute. I don't agree a lot with what you say. I don't agree with. I don't agree a lot with what you say. I don't agree with everything you've said, Laws. But we can sit and we could talk, we could discuss, we can reason. And I want Ideologees to be a place where we get somebody from all different spectrums and model what it means to have a conversation and not get into insults and ad hominem attacks, but rather engage in the argument. And even be humble enough to say, you've challenged me on that. I'm not going to insult you. I'm going to say, you made me think about that. There's nothing wrong with saying, okay, you've got me there. Let me go back and think about it, and I'll get back to you. You know what I mean? People, it's just this pride, this ego of, and really being beholden to your side, your group. It's like this group dynamics that, sometimes let's just think as an individual or just explore a little bit more than rather than putting this.
It's mutual respect, though, isn't it? And I think that, I was going to say that people get very brave when they're messaging or commenting, but then you also see quite a lot of videos, say at Speaker's Corner in London, where people will actually get into physical altercations over their particular rigid beliefs. And so it's not even just online that people get aggressive towards each other. I think it stems from an inability to have a debate. Now, a debate is something that was developed by the ancient Greeks as a way of trying to convince other people of a particular merit of an argument. And we've lost the ability to do that because instead it's the echo chamber setup where if you become very siloed. And I've had it a bit on, I'm surprised I've not actually had that much abuse on my channel yet. I'm sure it'll come.
Yeah, cool.
But what you do find, what you do. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I get it, man. You know what I'm saying, and I get it. Now, I say stuff where it's not even outlandish. I just say how I feel, and people say, but sometimes you got to understand. Like I said, you bro, you know where you're standing. You know where your heart is. Yeah, and I think that all we can do is encourage positive behavior. Communicating with each other, being confident in space, because what you're standing on, what you're doing, is got the true heart. When people are doing things from not the true heart through a manipulative space, they avoid these sort of conversations and avoid these spaces, avoid to sit down and talk. They're rather the tribalism, because what it is, they're leading on hysteria. And one thing, I know we're closing off now, one thing that annoys me is you've got to have these conversations, because people try to, yes, we want community together, but they use false information to get to a positive meme. That doesn't just when you do that, it creates people who don't trust you. So when politicians, we want it together, so I'm going to use a lie to bring that community together. But it's still positive we come together. But then in
Kinda
the
like
future, when we're building that in the future, you know what I'm saying? It's and that's why we're at loggerhead, even when it comes to things racially, because of lies that were told about ourselves, not even generations ago. It's just compounding it, taking education. Oh, yeah. You know what I thought, you know what I mean? And going to see Africa, oh, it's a beautiful piece of land. But I know as a soldier, you've been all around the world, so humans are, somebody said, what does a Taliban look like? You know what I mean? And my friend said, they don't have a look. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes, but we've been taught over here, they got to look, they got that, and they wear this, and they wear that, and you know what I'm saying? So it's like, unless you go to spaces and understand, you don't realize that what we've been told over here is not what... It's not what it really is. So it's about education, informative, and just want to know. But appreciate it, man.
Loz, thank you so much for coming to the Ideologees podcast. And Loz, could you maybe just tell our viewers where they can find you, and maybe there's a content piece that maybe you're that's in the future that perhaps people can look forward to. I know you create quite a lot of content pieces. So for the people that are new to you, tell us where they can find you and the kind of stuff that you're working on the content and the socials.
Yeah, sure. So I'm on all the usual sort of social media. I'm not on X because it's too toxic for me to go down.
Agreed.
But Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and it's all Nation Asleep, as I'm sure people can find me, or I can give you some links. At the moment, because I'm aware of the way that like people's attention span is not that long. I've been focusing on sort of 5-6 minute like little monologues, but this long form format is really where I think that you can start to explore themes, start to truly have a conversation, and so it's really good to be able to share this experience with you guys to start that ball rolling. And I think that hopefully viewers on my channel and your channels will sort of resonate with the discussion that we've had tonight, and just see, like you said a moment ago, that we're doing it from the right place for the right reasons, and that's what people need right now. They don't need any more influencers trying to rage bait.
Rage bait. Trigger. Yeah, that's true.
Loz, thank you so much, guys. Thank you for being part of this wonderful conversation, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one. God bless.
Thank you.
Blessings.
Thank you for watching the content we're putting out. Listen, make sure that you are liking, subscribing, and following us on all our social channels, including patreon.com. Make sure you're finding us on there to support what we do so we can support you. And remember, guys, be extra.